Hello, hello, hello. Good evening from Nairobi, cold Nairobi actually, which is very strange for the month of August. But happy that you've made time to join us for another hour this evening as we discuss an important topic. I think a topic that's important to everybody, and that is finances. Money, money, money. When you don't have it, it's a problem. When you have too much of it, it's a problem. When you're midway, you've got just barely enough to see you through, it's a problem. So what's the best way of solving this problem is by understanding proper financial management. Remember, our show streams live and addresses serious topics in a light and fun way, and we engage and discuss with our guests who are Kenyan entrepreneurs, industry leaders, innovators, and they're here to share their story with us. In studio tonight, we have Dr. Elizabeth Ngarachu, we've got Professor George Achoki, and we've got Kenneth Mushiri, and of course, a familiar face, Waweru Njoroge. For those watching us live on YouTube and Facebook, you can ask questions or make comments, and we bring them up on the screen. We value your contribution, and you can follow us via our Twitter and Facebook handles, which is at Gr8leadership Live, and it's at 8, number 8. Or email us at Gr8leadershiplive@gmail.com. Waweru, habari yako?
Nzuri sana, how are you doing?
Not bad. I'm sure you're looking forward to this talk. Money, money, money.
I need it, trust me. And obviously, we'd like to point out that we have shifted to a new time, and a lot of people usually used to us on a Sunday. We hope you enjoy this new time slot and you can make more engagement with us going forward. So this is going to be our standard time now, Mondays between 7 and 8 p.m. And we always encourage you to give us feedback on what you've seen, what you'd like to see, and just leave general comments about what you hear on the show and any other topics you might want to bring up. So I'd like to start, as we always do, by asking our guests to introduce themselves. For sake of reference, I'm going to be calling Elizabeth Daktari. I'll be referring to George as Prof. And Ken, you can just say as Ken. So, okay, great. So let's start with Daktari. Please introduce yourself in terms of your background, what you do.
Unmute your mic, Daktari. Unmute your mic.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ngarachu, consultant psychiatrist, co-founder and CEO of Nairobi Mental Health Services. My passion for mental health led me to analyze the market and found a need for affordable and dignified mental health care, which led to the founding of the mental health hospital called Nairobi Mental Health Services. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Daktari. Prof, we could do the same, please.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Achoki George. I'm an associate professor of accounting at United States International University. Been there for the last 22 years. Besides that, I'm also a board member at IPRA, and I'm happy to be part of this team to talk about financial management. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Ken?
Thank you, Waweru. My name is Kenneth Mushiri. I am an accountant for over 20 years. I've practiced for that period. I've also delved into risk management consulting. Currently working with Pine Bridge Consulting. That's our firm, partner. And I have launched into another career also that I plan to do for the rest of my life. And that is counseling psychology. So I'm studying counseling psychology, and I do part-time counseling. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you guys for the introductions. You know how we tend to always run out of time, so I'm going to jump straight into this. I'm going to start with the last person to introduce themselves, which was Ken. And this is going to be an obvious question. After finish with Ken, I'm going to move to Elizabeth, then I'll come back to Professor. So in general, how has the pandemic affected personal and business finances in Kenya? How has COVID-19 hit people?
Okay. I mean, right now, things have been thoroughly disrupted because businesses have basically shut down. Quite a number of businesses have shut down. And the period that it has taken the period to take to recover will be quite some time. So some of the things that are happening, I'm seeing people losing jobs. A friend of mine recently, the place he worked just shut down, and they were all retrenched. So that is currently a big problem. So we can see supply chains have been disrupted. Recently, we've heard about the Mitumba issue. So obviously, incomes have drastically dropped. I've seen a lot of people trying to survive by just selling what they can. I've seen people drive to shags and buy produce and come and sell in the estates just to make some little money. So it's been quite hard on the people.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Actually, it just reminded me, at one point we had a show called Fresh Essentials. We were talking about people who are actually doing that, doing produce from wherever they could actually get it. So thanks for that reminder. Daktari, based on that aspect of how COVID has impacted financial, both business and personal, I wanted to ask from you, are the financial repercussions of COVID-19 increasing what I like to call debt despair?
To some extent, yes. And this particularly address let's look at the credit facilities. They keep sending these intimidating letters to clients who have been affected by this pandemic through job losses, reduced pay. So it increases the debt despair in terms of loss of hope, in terms of trying to meet that.
Okay, so I think you've picked up on something that I was going to ask in terms of the insensitivity. You know, the way landlords are locking you out of your houses, or banks are giving moratoriums for only a period of 90 days. They're not going to extend that because of A, B, C, D. So has that insensitivity or lack of understanding what people are going through, although I'm sure the creditors are also going through the same problems, but has that now made the problem even worse? Like you're saying about people being mean, for lack of a better word.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay.
The fact that they have lost jobs or have some reduced form of pay, they are unable to meet their obligations, and that the fact that they keep getting these intimidating letters and there's nowhere in sight of how to meet them now just increases the debt despair.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Professor, let's bring you into the conversation. I want to stick with the pandemic at the moment. In terms of financial management, what are some of, you see what we're just talking about now, where people are either being given nasty notices to say move out or do this, and shops have been closed, buildings have been shut down. But what are the survival strategies that one can deploy, A, as a person, as in personal, and B, for businesses?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, one thing that we need to understand is that COVID-19 is a global phenomenon that has affected the whole world, and the financial repercussions have been heavy across globally and also nationally. Talking about Kenya, we already have consequences that have taken place, as was explained by Mushiri. Just today, I was reading about Kenya Airways. They're going to offload half of their pilots. We have, and many other companies, we've seen the financial institutions and that. So there's, of course, what you have, the ripple effect. up to about 70%. Just last month alone, we had about 1 million people who'd already lost their jobs. So basically what these people need to do now is to calm down and learn that in finances, there are two things. Finance, first of all, is the lifeblood of business. And as that is also important for personal management. So what we need to know that, what do you need finances for? We need that for investing. That is so that we can grow our wealth. We need finances also for operating activities, what we call working capital, that is day to day. So now what's happening, because people are losing their jobs, they need to scale down. We need to come down to the basic operating activities. That is what we call the basics under what we call the Maslow's law, basic. We are talking about food, we're talking about rent, and basically clothing. So we need to cut down on our investments now and just go back to the basic operating activities. The key thing is that now what we need to do is to have, our individuals now need to have like strategic plans. We need to look at what is it that is a very essential. First of all, rent has become a major challenge. World Bank was putting it at 91% of Nairobi residents are paying rent. Yesterday, up to 40% of people's income goes towards rent. So this is a major expenditure that we need to scale down. So we need to move down to affordable houses so that they're able to cut down on this expenditure. Food is the next item. So right now, the basic strategy is just about that. And then they need to keep records of the expenses. Once they start keeping records, then they will go down and start seeing how they can now get onto the nitty-gritty and see what they can do away with. We need to consult, they need to consult financial experts. That is so key, because right now we just about survival. And that's what also companies are doing. It's not about making profits, it's just about survival, because COVID is not going to be perpetual. It's a short term and then we'll get over it. Yeah.
Thanks, Professor. Actually, you've now triggered something that I was thinking about and something that Ken had mentioned. My question goes to this. I mean, from an aspect of financial or even financial services and what have you, what happens to those guys who are in the informal sector in terms of how do they manage their finances when invariably they're living hand to mouth? Bottom of the pyramid. So kind of, I mean, that kind of lifestyle, that kind of sector. Ken, I'd like to ask you that. How do they manage their finances if they're living hand to mouth?
Well, when I thought about that question, I'm thinking about that question, and one of the assumptions we make is that there's the informal sector, people who are in the Juakali sector. So you're looking at your plumbers, your electricians, your salonists, maybe even people who just do day-to-day jobs, depending on where they are at and depending on the skills they have. I have observed that actually the middle class has a bigger problem than those guys who are what you call people who work in the informal sector. And I'll give you an example of a guy that I know. This guy is an electrician. He does, odd jobs. Once in a while, he'll get a nice, contract. But the guy lives in Kibera. Okay, so he doesn't live in a nice, flashy house. He just lives in Kibera. But that guy actually owns a 3-bedroom house in Kisumu. And even the people around him are wondering, how did this guy get this money? How did he make this money? So we have a lot of assumptions around those guys in the informal sector. Hand to mouth, yes, true. But they actually do have ways of raising money. And they have their chamas. There's this group of chama. There's a group that guys who ride motorcycles, the boda guys. They came together and they used to raise 100 bob every day. And those guys actually built some rental mabati houses, and they have the money coming in from them. Yeah. So there's a lot of assumptions around that area. So those guys actually know how to survive better than the middle class, in my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Ken. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that and said, "Oh, kumbe." Daktari, I'd like to come to you now and ask the question: how are money and mental health connected? I mean, they've called incidences of people who have decided to harm themselves because of debt, despair, or having problems with money has been dubbed the silent killer. But what's the connection between money and mental health?
Socioeconomic status, particularly change in financial status, are triggers to mental illness and suicide. And this cuts across all strata, whether you're in developed or a developing country, it's a trigger. That's how they're interrelated.
Okay. Then I'd like to come to Prof and ask this question. Um, is there any real push in this country in terms of advocating for financial literacy? So this goes back now to what I'd asked Ken and what you'd actually picked up on yourself, in the sense that there might not be any form of, these guys who create chamas, obviously there's something that they've learned from other people, but is there anybody in this country who's actually advocating for financial literacy? Prof, you're muted. Okay.
KRA.
Prof, sorry, just start again because we didn't hear you. You were a bit muted.
Yes, I'm just saying that we basically have those at various sectors. If you start first of all with the formal sector, we have companies, the register of companies. Companies register, they have to register.
Okay, looks like Prof's connection is not the best.
Companies to pay VAT, and in that they're
okay. Shall we try and just move on quickly, and we'll come back to Prof and ask him the same question. And I'd like then to jump back to Ken and ask this question. The question then becomes this: what do entrepreneurs, and we've been focusing actually a lot during the season.
Sorry,
during the, I'm saying, Prof, are you back?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So the question asks, who's pushing for financial literacy in this country?
Yes, we basically have various bodies, like I was saying. From the formal level up, we have companies that are registered under Companies Act. There's the financial requirements that they need to fulfill at the end of the year, and all those have requirements. Then we have the body ISPAC, we have a government, we have the Kenya KRA that already pushes for all those SMEs. We also have accounting for SMEs that requires how we should file our report. So basically that takes care of it. The only challenge we have is that the SMEs, much more so, you had mentioned the suffering they go through, is that they do not maintain their books of records. And that's a major requirement. They do not maintain proper book of records. They do not follow the general accounting principles. So as much as these are requirements, they have to pay VAT. Unfortunately, that's why no problem comes in, so that when they realize it's already too late. Because you see, accounting is about record keeping. So if you don't keep those properly, you'll not be able to tell whether you're doing well or not. But we do also have financial experts. We have financial institutions do come here very strongly when they're giving SMEs and just basically individuals loans that are advising on how to keep the books and also how to be literate financially.
Okay, I'm going to come to Ken. Although I think Prof has answered the question, we're asking with regards to where SMEs tend to go wrong when it comes to managing their business finances. And he basically summed it up in saying the accounting aspect, or what they do with their accounts, is very key to ensuring that they have some kind of financial management. They don't go under, they don't end up stressing like what we've now discussed with Elizabeth. So I'm going to change the question. I'm going to ask right now, not some personal, and I can ask all our guests to actually pick in on this. But are there any financial rules of thumb that you prescribe to personally? And this will go to everybody, actually. But I'm going to start with Ken. Are there any rules of thumb that you personally subscribe to in terms of your financial management?
Yes, I do have a few. The first one I have is an interesting one because of my faith. I'm a Christian, so I tithe. I actually believe that tithing goes a long way in preventing a lot of holes in my pocket. So actually, it works. I've done it for 20 years. I'm good with it. The next one is that I budget. I try, and I don't always successfully follow my budget, but at least I put down what I think I need to spend on, depending on what I have in my account or what I'm expecting to get. So budgeting is one of them. And then I always adjust my lifestyle. I guess because I'm an accountant, I know I understand money a little bit, and I am able to adjust and say if my income is going to drop, if I have, say for example, there's one time I lost a job, and I didn't want to go back into formal employment. I wanted to go into informal employment, and I adjusted my lifestyle. I changed my kids' schools. I cut down on a lot of expenses. I just I adjust my lifestyle. And then the last one, of course, is I don't borrow. I don't borrow to finance my lifestyle. I avoid that as much as possible. So if I need to buy a mobile phone, a TV, those kinds of things, I usually will not borrow to finance them. And then, of course, I'll put away some little money. It may not be the proverbial 10%, but I do try to put away a little bit of money the rainy days. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Yeah, just to add on to that.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, it is critical that individuals do have, as a family or as a unit, they must have what is called a strategic plan. Strategic plan is just a broad having goals, what you need to achieve, and give them a time period, 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, and then after that you prioritize them, because you cannot have a house. Same time, you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you want to have a family, you want to take your kids for education. So you have a strategic plan and divide them into goals. And then say, this is what I want to achieve within 10 years. And then you start working over that. This is what I want to work over 5 years, 2 years, 1 year. So you achieve one at a time, because you cannot have them all simultaneously. Second, like Ken has said, my colleague, you need to have a budget. Budget is just expenditure showing where money is going to come from and where money is going to go to. So that way you are able to spend within some timelines, have a report, then have an analysis, whether you're overspending or underspending. Then third, you need to have a manageable family, because some of these costs, like you said, are variable. If you're going to have 3 children, fees is going to be 3 times. If you're going to have 4 children, fees is going to be 4 times. Have a manageable family. Fifth, you need to adopt an affordable lifestyle. The way Ken has said, affordable means live within your means. Only then will you be able to grow wealth. Sixth, consult a financial expert. It's unfortunate that whenever people need entertainment, they will go pay and go get entertained. When they have spiritual issues, they're going to go and see a psychiatrist. But when they have financial problems, they think that they're the best to handle. There are people who have been trained, and that is their work. Seek financial expertise. Then 7, have an emergency fund. Emergency fund is supposed to take care of emergencies. For example, COVID. An emergency fund, how much should you keep in emergency fund? Emergency fund should always be equivalent to 6 months of your operating expenses. If Kenyans, a lot of people had done that, we will not be going through the kind of financial strain they're going through. If they had kept 6 months of your operating expenses, meaning that if you lose your job now, for the next 6 months, your lifestyle is not going to change. So you need to have that. Then how much should you save? You should also save for retirement, because you're not going to work forever. So retirement, you should be saving 10% of your income for retirement, minimum 10%. And then ultimately stick to, there's a formula, it's called 70-20-10 rule. 10% of your income should be saved, 20% of your income should go towards paying debts, and then 70% of your income should be for operating expenses. How much should be rent? Rent should not be more than 30% of your income. Then inevitably you'll be able to work. Things will work out. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. do you want to jump in? Anything you can personally add to that in terms of rules of thumb?
I agree with Prof and Ken. I consult financial experts. Second, I budget, and with that, I'm able to see where I may be going often, and that helps me to adjust to basically live within my means. Yeah.
So now I wanted to then ask this question, but I'm going to stick with you actually, Daktari. I wanted to ask a question. It's more important to be happy than to be rich. I'm going to leave that as an open question in terms of it's more important to be happy than to be rich. Most exam questions will say expound, but it's not an exam. This is a conversation we're having. So I'm sure there's a lot of people will be wondering, yeah, money makes happiness, or is it the other way around? So it's a question. It's more important to be happy than to be rich. I'll give it to you to take us through that.
I think Kenneth, he's our psychologist. I'll throw that to him.
Kenneth, you've been put
I'd
in the
rather
firing
be
line.
crying in a facility.
Sorry, Martin, what are you saying?
Look, Dr.
I'd rather be crying in a facility.
I'm saying Dr. has thrown that question to you, Ken. Is it more important to be happy than to be rich?
I think it's more important to be happy, because a lot of the times we will get, okay, fine. It doesn't mean that if you don't have money, you will not be happy. That's sure. If you're poor, it's not fun. It's not interesting. So you want to have some money. But now when you go to the point of being rich, the problem with trying to get rich is that it's not a bad thing, but it can actually make you unhappy, because when you have too much money, again, if you don't know how to handle it very well, and you went acquiring it, you stole, you did all manner of things. I mean, you're going to be rich, but you're not going to be happy. So it really it's a tricky question to answer. But I've seen a lot of people get unhappy in trying to be rich. So I personally, I'd rather be happy than rich, but that's just me. Yeah.
Okay, if anybody else wants to add on to that, I'll give them an opportunity. But first, I'm going to ask Prof this question. You can add it. You can either answer that and then go into the question I'm going to ask you, which is this, and this actually might relate to what Ken just said. Actually, how does one find themselves in debt despite not living an excess lifestyle? Our guests love muting themselves today. Eh?
Mike, Prof, Mike, please.
Yeah, first of all, going back to the discussion topic, happiness is relative.
Okay.
Yes, that is one. It's relative. Are you going to 20, 30, 40, 50%? Happiness is relative. But if you ask me in terms of when you have wealth, it means when you reach, it means you have wealth. What does that mean? Having wealth means you are able to take care of problems that lead to unhappiness. For example, if you have wealth, you're able to take care of your health. You've seen people, when you reach, it's just about where you're going for medication. Is it going to be Aga Khan? Is it going to be South Africa? Is it going to be India? Or is it going to be UK? Second, the kind when you reach also, you get sick, but the problems, the kind of illness that faces the rich are manageable. You're talking of high blood pressure, you're talking of those are manageable diseases. When you don't have money, the kind of diseases you get, you're talking about kwashiorkor, you're talking about foot and mouth disease, you're talking about getting all those are diseases that can kill you within days, malaria. Second, in terms of education, when you have money, you are able to get the best education. You've seen people go to schools that pay $1 million a semester. If you don't have money, then you probably have to go to local schools. Local schools, and then what happens with the time you're not able to get opportunities, and then move on and on. And again, the other thing also, in terms of lifestyle, you can choose where to live when you have the money. So that's what I'm saying. If that is what is contributing towards happiness, then you are able to you're even able to live longer. Why? Because you're able to take care of yourself, be in an environment that is much more conducive. And studies have shown that developed countries have longer lifespan than undeveloped countries. So if you ask me anytime, it's true. I've heard somebody talk about the Bible, that more problems, more money, more problems. Yeah, that is true. But if you ask me, I'll say you're better off with the problems of the rich than the problems of the poor. Thank you. on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. We're going to take a quick breather, but first I want to ask Dr. this question. Why is the pressure of debt enough to make some people want to harm themselves, while others who are in a similar situation don't necessarily break under the pressure?
Thank you. Suicide is associated with mental illness, and in particular depression. It is a severe form, and in psychiatry, it's called, it's actually a psychiatric, it's an emergency in psychiatry. So when you have financial problems, remember I had mentioned that it's a trigger. It's a trigger for mental illness, especially when you're predisposed to getting a mental illness. Also, having a mental illness means you have poor coping skills, and that already exacerbates the situation, which leads to suicide. Something else is that sometimes when you do have a stressor in your life, financially related, it can trigger something that happened in your past, and that would make one feel that there's no hope for the future, and decide to consider suicide as an option.
Okay, thank you, Dr. I believe we have some work that needs to be shown, like as students in the classroom. Teacher Martin.
I think before I go into the breather, I think Prof has one more thing to mention about debt, connecting debt to affluent lifestyle. Please go ahead, Prof, and then we go into the slides.
Yeah, you had asked a question. Why is it that some people still get into debt despite not living within lifestyle? Yes, what I can add to that is that what happens is that sometimes we're not living a excessive lifestyle. Sometimes we get into activities, we take more responsibilities at what our income is capable of meeting, because basically the bottom line is about income and expenditure. You may not be drinking, you may not be smoking, you may not be getting into all that kind of the lifestyle that we call affluent, but what happens in the end is that you're taking more responsibilities than what your income can hold. Then ultimately you have to go down. We have people who get into activities like gambling. We have people who are getting into activities like how they get into, apart from gambling, they get into activities that do not actually give them real income. We have a lot of people getting into betting, we have people who get conned all over. So those are also issues that do come in. So in the end, you may be living a lifestyle that is not affluent, but in terms of your expenditure pattern, that you are not engaging in activities that are likely to increase your wealth. Yeah. So that is exactly what happens.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's something now Ken will walk us through. Some slides he's shared with us. Yes, over to you, Bwana Ken.
Thank you very much. I just borrowed this from Richard Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And basically, we all have financial statements. We all have a balance sheet. We have an income statement. Those are two very important financial statements. And basically, they tell us what Prof was saying is they give the income, the profit and loss will tell us what's our income, what's our expenses, and then the balance sheet will tell us what are our assets and what are our liabilities. So we're going to look at what are how do we, as especially the middle class, how do we spend our money? How do we treat wealth? How do we treat our wealth? Just go on to the next slide. And the income that we get, basically, yes, I think that one. Basically, the income we get comes from assets that we have. So if you have an asset generates income. So, for example, if you have a rental house or you have shares, you'll be paid a dividend. will be paid rent. If you have a taxi, you'll get some money at the end of the day. If you have a matatu, so that's how an asset behaves. So I want to define an asset as something that produces an income for us, right? And then we'll go on to define what a liability does. So go on to the next slide. So a liability takes money out of the pocket. Okay. So basically, the relationship between your income statement and your balance sheet. Basically, what we're saying is that when you have a liability, it's taking money out of your pocket. So let's take some examples of liabilities. It could be the car that you own, for example. What does it do? It has to spend. Of course, you need it, but the truth is, it does take money out of your pocket, right? The mortgage that you pay, of course, you're paying for a house. Yes, that's true, but it does take money out of your pocket. But basically, those are things that probably loans you have borrowed. It takes money out of your pocket, so it's a liability. It's a loan, right? Let's move on to the next one. Now, how does the middle class operate? Now, most of the middle class and many people, those who are employed especially, they have a job, all right? They get a paycheck, and then they have all these expenses. They have taxes, they have rent to pay, they have transport, all right? And then they have liabilities which they take on, which take more money out of the pocket, right? So they've got their mortgage, they've got their credit cards, they've got car loans that they're paying, all right? So that's how a lot of the middle class operate. Move on to the next one. All right, so what's the cash flow of the wealthy? Now the wealthy if you look at those boxes, you will see the income box is larger than the expense box, and the asset box is larger than the liability box. So the wealthy spend time building up on the asset, and the asset produces an income, and then they have their expenses to take care of. But what about those who are not so wealthy? What usually happens is that they have a smaller asset box and a larger liability box, and the expenses are larger and the income is smaller. So when we are working towards becoming wealthy, we need to build up on the assets so that we can have more income, and that income will take care of any expenses that you have. So for example, I had a chat with a group that I was training, and I asked them, if you had 500,000 shillings and you wanted to buy an asset, I mean, you wanted to buy something, you're retiring, what would you do? Would you buy a plot of land, or would you buy some small shack somewhere that is producing, maybe a plot where they are getting 2,000, 3,000 shillings per house, maybe total 12,000 shillings? And a lot of them said they would buy a plot. But you see, a plot may be considered an asset, but according to this diagram, it's really not an asset because it's not producing an income. So you have a plot somewhere, but you're stuck in your house, and that's a problem that we have today. This is COVID season, and you have a nice plot somewhere in Kitengela or some other place, but you can't do anything with it, unless you sell it or you go and farm on it. If you're going to farm on it, yes, it can produce an income. So what should we do to build our assets so that they can produce income? Choose assets that produce income, as you make your decisions to where to invest money. Move on to the next one. So ultimately, what are we saying? As the rich, we know what the rich are doing. They are acquiring assets, all right? And the middle class, we are busy acquiring liabilities, but we think they are assets. And I'm hoping that this time of COVID is teaching us how to, because it's a season, as Professor has said, it's a season that will pass. When we come out of this season, can we acquire assets as opposed to liabilities? Let's think about how we can acquire assets. Assets work for us. They make money for us, all right? And finally, just to close it, I just want to bring context to how we spend our money. Going to the next slide, Martin. the seasons of our money, the seasons that we live. The way we use money and the way we operate with money is different for all of us. We are not at the same place. Okay, somebody who is 40 years old, they're preparing for retirement. Somebody who is between 31 and 40 years old, they're currently trying to build up their lives. You know, they're going into they're building up a family, they're getting married, they're acquiring a few assets here and there. All right. And of course, there's the young person who is 22, 30 years, who's still getting started. So we are all at different places when it comes to money. So when it comes to managing our money, we kind of need to be sensitive to where we are at, and then make the right decisions depending on where we are at, right? So it's all the financial advice that Prof was saying. You need to go and look for somebody who can advise you. They will look into where are you at and where are you going and what age are you at, what stage of life are you at, and so it's very important that as we talk about money, we don't pressurize everybody to think that they are the same place. Somebody who is at 61 should be thinking about, should be enjoying their retirement. They can't be going to start a shop somewhere. It won't work. Yeah, but thank you very much for. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. I'm sure there's a lot of people who picked up a lot from that, especially those who are over 40. Martin.
Hey, I was just seeing where I belong. I belong in that camp.
Yeah, I was like,
and
you start measuring,
getting
Martin. Like, hey, okay.
Yeah.
Once the learning goes till 60, so I'm still in a good place in that regard. But after that, well, now, Prof, you want something to that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin and William. That's just interesting perspective. Yes, Ken has put that in a very clear way. What I want to add, just to break it down and bring it in the Kenyan context, is that the first thing you need to do is consult. And I always tell people, consult a financial expert. If you cannot come to me with 100,000 or 200,000 and say, Prof, where can I take this money? I can't give you an answer straight away. I need to know your age, like he's saying. I need to know when do you need this money? I'll give you an example. When we had Safaricom, in the initial IPO came in, people even borrowed money. Banks were hawking money. They bought shares, and then what they were doing, they thought these were shares that were going to give them windfall income, capital gains. So as soon as they bought them, they thought they would sell them at a profit. But again, everybody had the same thoughts. These were shares that were meant to give you long-term returns. For the next 3 years, these shares never went beyond the initial sale offer price, 5 shillings. People are taking short-term loans. They were being deducted the amount. The banks had even held the shares as security. They could not offload. Right now, as we speak, those shares are going for almost 30 shillings per share. So these are the kind of things, if you seek advice, somebody would have told you, Safaricom shares were meant for long-term, paying school fees for your children. They were not meant for retirement and then what am I going to use next year? So that helps a lot. Second, in terms of assets, just like you say, the middle class and the rich, unfortunately, that's exactly what happens with the middle class. We tend to live beyond our means. You buy a car thinking that's an asset, while in reality, a car is a liability. A car is supposed to move you from A to B and then help you generate your income. How much do you spend in maintaining a car? You spend about 20% of the cost of the car every year. You're buying a car of $1 million, you'll be spending 200,000 a year. Divide that per month, that's almost 17,000. And you're earning 60,000, certainly. You'll not be able to maintain that car. So the operating costs go higher. Half of the month you'll either be walking or the car will not be serviced. And then you also you got that car on a loan, you are paying interest. The other day, NCBA acquired a yard just to repossess the cars that people are not able to pay. The same thing happened with Stanbic. The other day, people who went into business. Then the second thing is, please understand the nature of business you want to get into. People just get into business because the neighbor is into the business, because their uncle was successful in that business. That is not a reason to get into the business you want to get into. Understand the business, that all businesses have their own unique requirements. get to the bottom line and then understand the business before you get in and you find yourself halfway. If you're not willing to wake up at 4, 3 in the morning, don't get into the chicken, rearing business. Third, you need to diversify your income. You're not going to get, with one salary alone, you cannot make it. In fact, they say the middle class, those who are salaried, are only one salary away from poverty. If you just stopped, you fired this month, next month you'll be in the poverty realm. So diversify your income. Then the other thing you need to do is you need to pool your income. Those who have spouses and that, they need to pool their income and then prepare the budget, what we talked about earlier. Once you pool your income, you have a bigger pool to operate from, and then you'll have the priorities that you need to work on. So that is what I will add on to this, in addition to what Mushiria said. Thank you.
And
And then just to add on to that, just one thing I want to add on to as well, is that when people look for jobs, that when they diversify, look for jobs that are commensurate with your job descriptions. You see a whole professor like me, what I'll be looking for, I'd probably look at teaching part-time in other universities, developing curriculum, external examiner, as opposed to going down and starting activities like chicken rearing, opening a kiosk, things that somebody has perfected over the years. They're going to beat you at that. So if people get jobs that are commensurate with their qualifications, with that, they're able to move faster, and then they're able to just break it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm crossing chicken rearing off my list. It was my number one.
Let me just add something there, if you don't mind.
Shoot.
That last point that Prof has mentioned is very important. One of the things that has happened now is that people have lost jobs, and people are launching into all manner of projects. One of the things that one must ask themselves is, what do I have in my hands? What gifts do I have? What abilities do I have? What skills do I have? And then begin to use those skills to make an income. Find out, how do I make an income with the skills that I have? There's a writer who talks about doing something for 10,000. When you're an expert, if you're an expert at something, you've done it for 10,000 hours. What are those 10,000 hours you've spent doing? And that's what you want to go and invest your time and effort in, because you're likely to succeed. But if you go copying people who have done, chicken farming, as Prof is saying, and you've never, the most you've interacted with a chicken is when you are, eating it. Really? It's not gonna work.
That's true.
So guys right now, this is the time to ask yourself, what skills do I have? What am I able to do with the abilities, the gifts that God has given me, and the skills that I've learned over the time I've been working, and use those skills. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ken. I want to bring Daktari into the conversation, and I'm sure she's been dying to jump in and tell us, no, these two men are wrong. But okay, I want to ask this question, and this is specific to, I think, how people perceive themselves, and when they wake up in the morning and they're in debt, or they're in crisis, or they're thinking, what am I going to do? What the gentleman have mentioned is that maybe having a side hustle, but that side hustle has to be commensurate to what your skills are. But then how do you then get someone to understand that debt does not make you a bad person? Yeah, the notion that you are not your debt. I think there's obviously a cloud that hangs over people when people start bad-mouthing other people because they owe them money, and then that makes them look like they're bad people. But are you your debt? From a physical perspective, yes, but does having a debt make you a bad person?
That's an interesting question. Having debt, I believe that public education on financial management, especially if it could start in schools, and I mean, what do you call it? Primary. If you could start in primary and secondary, that way kids start to learn early on how to manage their finances. rather than being an adult and then being faced with a pandemic and you have no idea what to do. I think that would be a good way to show someone that they're not a bad person because of debt. Yeah.
And thank you so much. I love that answer. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to just ask, let me start with Prof now. What are the sources of financing that every small business needs to know about? I'm just tying it back to some of the episodes we had at the beginning. Sources of finance in terms of, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, one thing we need to understand is that finance is the lifeblood of business. Businesses require finances during all their stages in their life.
Okay.
When you're starting an entity, you require money. That is what we call the setup costs. You need money, capital, you need money to get licenses and that. You require finances. During the life of the company, you'll also require finances. That is what you'll call for working capital, taking care of the day-to-day activities, paying electricity, water, salaries and that, buying stock. And even when the company is coming to an end, you'll also require money. When you're guys into receivership, liquidation, you'll also require money because you have to pay off all those. So finance, you need to know, is the lifeblood of business. Without finance, no business can prosper. Having said that, what are the sources that are available? When you're looking at sources, we have so many sources. We have what we call internal and then external finance. Internal is when, for example, me, Achoki, I do what? I save money. Or I can get partners. I team up with Mato and I team up with Elizabeth and Joroge, and then we put in, you become shareholders. Or we can also issue shares. Those are sources of funds. Then you also have external. External sources is when now we go for loans. Loans can come from two sources, financial institutions and non-financial institutions. As you move up, you can also have angels getting in. We can also have investors, people who just come in pumping money in that. But in all this, what is critical for SMEs and business to know is to look at the cost of the sources of money. That is what's most critical. Because in finance, it's just about cost, then we have about returns. So that's the first thing you need to look at. The bottom line, what is it going to cost me to get money? What you know that the most institutions will give you finances, but of course there's what we call the 5 E's. They have 5 C's they have to do. Credit appraisal, they look at your credibility, your credit worthy, all that. So you need to look at those in the end, because being in business is about getting a maximum return to the shareholders. For you to do that in the short term, we must make profits. And to be able to make profits, your income must be greater than your expenses. One of the expenses is the finance cost. So those are the sources, financial, non-financial. You go to SMEs. We have institutions that will just focus on SMEs. You go to financial institutions that will focus. Then you can also get money from, partnerships. You can get money from friends. So those are the many sources. But what is the key thing is just the cost of getting that money.
Thank you, Prof. We need to have more time on this show. We need to do a follow-up on this. I want to come back to Daktari and ask a question. I think it might have been touched on by Prof, but from what you've seen, are financial-related incidences of either depression or suicide more prominent in developed or developing countries?
So socioeconomic status, and in particular, a change in your financial status is a trigger for mental illness or suicide. And this cuts across all strata of the society, whether you're in a developed country or a developing country. Change in financial status, the financial constraints is a trigger. And looking at the studies, let me just mention one that was done this month, the month of June of 2020, between it was the 24th of June to the 30th in the US by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. They found that 11% of Americans had thought of suicide. And this was following the financial problems due to the pandemic. And when you look at also other countries, as they do their studies, you get to see that we all have similar findings.
Okay, thank you so much, Daktari. Ken, I'm going to jump to you and ask this particular question. What are the challenges and opportunities in regards to digital financial services in this market? Obviously, I think I'm referring to your money transfers and things like that, but you can enlighten me. So yeah, challenges and opportunities. Challenges and the opportunities in regards to digital financial services.
I don't know whether you're asking me that from a point of you wanting to go into that business or from a point of I'll answer it the way I think I'm hearing it.
Go for it.
I think some of the challenges are obvious. We have it's much easier to borrow money now. We have the likes of Fuliza and others that enable us to borrow very, very quickly. The challenge is that that's an opportunity actually for you to be able to borrow when you need the money. But the problem is if you don't know how to handle your borrowing or how to manage your borrowing, and that's why we say in personal, when it comes to personal finances, you really need to have a meeting with yourself and agree on what you're going to spend money on and what you're not going to spend money on, because the opportunity to borrow is there. The challenge is the interest rates that those digital borrowing services or digital financial services are charging are phenomenal. I mean, it's like the proverbial credit card. It's really expensive. So people really have to be careful about borrowing from these digital platforms. But Wawero, if you're planning to get into it, it's a fantastic business. You will make money. That's for sure. Yeah. Thank
you. I'll remember this day and I'll make sure I get to you a kidogo there somewhere with all the advice.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add on to what Ken has said, when you're talking about the digital platforms and that, well, the rise of this, if we just go back slightly, is after in the Kenyan sector, they introduced the loans, we had a cap on the loans. Because of that cap on the loans, we found that banks were now not lending money to the SMEs and individuals with low income, simply because the margin was so low. And why is that? Basically, banks do what we call due diligence, and then they do credit appraisal and see whether you're able to pay or not. If you're not able to pay or your credit rating is low, what they'll do is that they lump extra premium and charge extra interest. So when that law was brought in, we had a lot of banks scaling down, and then from there now we had this opening up, the digital bank opening up. They do not do due diligence. You just apply and you get money. More often than not, I just get SMS on my phone. You're eligible for this amount of money. You're eligible for this amount of money. So what has happened is that has made people to borrow money when they don't have a plan on how to spend it. That is one. Because banks will ask you, what do you want to do with this money? What do you want to do with this money? Then they look at that and say, sorry, we can't give you money, or we can only give you this amount. And then you also have government laws. You cannot get, when you're going to borrow money, you must have a third of your pay. These digital banks, they don't look at that. So it's what has happened. People now borrowing left and right and center. If you go to CRB, Credit Reference Bureau, thousands and thousands of people have borrowed, have been gotten their names. There are some as low as 200 shillings, 300 shillings. So because they are not planned to use that money prudently, they get that money and then they put it into areas that do not give them income. A lot of people use that money for betting. We have these games, betting and all that. Others use that money and then spend it on activities that do not give them income, the liabilities that we had Ken talking about. So as a result of that, people have gotten poorer. They're not able to pay that because we're not putting them into business. So like you said, it's a double-edged sword. If used properly, I'm telling you, it's able to do wonders. But the interest rates are so high on those loans. If you compound them on an annual basis, there was one that had an interest rate of almost 300%. And that's why you see the president the other time was so keen, said, let's open this up so that people can go to the mainstream borrowing. Same story with the credit cards that Ken has mentioned. Credit cards are not governed, they're not governed by the rules when you're talking about the limit that you had on borrowing. Some of the credit cards have interest rates of as high as 39%. And that is something that people do not know. You're basically spending money that you have not earned. As long as you're working, it's okay. But the moment you stop working now, you've already spent probably next month's salary. And then you end up getting into the what problem. So those things require, what it requires is discipline. Prudent financial management is just about discipline. If you have financial discipline, it does not matter. I've seen people with 100,000 in their pockets. They walk into a supermarket, just buy one packet of milk and then one bread and walk away. And I've seen people with 20,000 walk into the supermarket and come back with having carried things over 22,000 shillings. So it's all just about discipline. If you're disciplined, you have the financial discipline, then you'll be able to move to the next level. And I believe that cuts across all levels, the discipline, that you must have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Martin, I know there's some questions you want to ask, but there's something I want to trigger, something that triggered a question I have. Based on what Prof was talking about, responsibility or, having some kind of discipline. The aspect of discipline, and I'll put this to all our guests. Who are the people who are, I don't know how to put this without getting me in trouble. Anyway, fine. Who manages their finances better, men or women? I'll start with Daktari.
I'll throw it once again to Kenneth.
So Ken, I'd like you to, and then Prof, I'd like you to weigh in as well.
Majority of the time, we think that it looks like women take better. I mean, they're better with money than men, but I disagree. It's not gender based. I think I've seen women who will, they'll go out shopping and they will really shop, and there is no school fees around. Mzee will take care of school fees, and she will, and Mzee is struggling, and then you have men who, when they get a little bit of money, they are all over the place. They're in bars, they are partying, and basically, I think it's a personal decision that one has to have. I don't want to make it as, I don't think it's a gender issue. It definitely involves just you deciding that this is what I want to be like with money. But personality does also come into it. Whether you're a sanguine or a choleric or all those things. So you end up, that also kind of has an impact on how you spend your money.
Yeah. As for me, I will not really bring it down and say a line between gender issue, whether it's men or women. It all, first of all, depends on the literacy, financial literacy. If you're financially literate, then it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. That's, to me, I think, is the bottom line. Second, it's about also as individuals. Are you a risk taker or are you a risk averse? Those who are risk takers tend to take risk and they end up spending more money. They get it back, they don't get it back. Those who are risk averse probably don't spend money, and then they go slowly. So in terms of those two, men are more risk takers, women are risk averse. So when you look at it that way, you might tend to say that ladies are good at managing money because they're risk averse, but again, their returns are also less. Somebody says that's why we have more men in prison than ladies, because they're already out there taking more risks, and then they're able to get returns. So it all just depends about the financial literacy in terms of that. I'm not going to say it's men, I'm not going to say about women. But if you ask the economy, if you talk about economy as a country, they love ladies. Why? Because ladies love to spend. So they love. A lady can have 10 pair of shoes and say she doesn't have shoes. A man will have 2 pairs and say it's okay. A man can walk into a supermarket, 10,000 shillings, just buy one need and leave. The lady will stay there for hours. So you see, with all that wrong, you can say that it's probably lady, but the bottom line is all about the financial discipline. If you get it right, I've seen ladies who are single perfectly managing their funds, and I've seen guys who are just, they get money and they don't turn up for a whole week at home. So it's all just about the literacy and discipline. That's how I would leave it.
There's a term they use in golf when you're in a bunker and they say well out. you answered that question with a well out.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a question I wanted to ask. Cryptocurrency, pyramid, Ponzi schemes, and betting. Who will take on that one? Because of late, I was asked something last week about cryptocurrency. It's been doing the rounds on social media, and guys seem like that's quick money, for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, let me pick it up, and then my colleagues can join in.
Yeah.
There is something I wanted to finish with. We have, this is my advice generally to the public, sources of funds. Njoroge just limited me to companies, SMEs and that. What about for individuals? I'll just put it out because it comes under what you've mentioned. Shylocks, pyramid schemes, they all fall under the same realm. Why? Shylocks, when you borrow money from them, they give an interest rate of up to 30% per month. Annualize that and it comes to about 360% in a year. Banks will give you at a rate of up to 13-14%. So just look at that. You borrow 10,000, after a month you're paying 3,000. And then what do they normally do? They also deduct that interest up front. So now you get 7,000, and then you sign that you are paid 30,000. You're taken 10,000. Month and again, it is compounded. So within 2 months, if you don't pay, that is it. What kind of the other one is about pyramid schemes. We tell people, very tempting because of the returns. They tell you they're going to give you 10% per month return. 10% per month in a year, that is 120%. These guys are also in business. Where would they be investing to give you that kind of return of 120% interest? And if they can give it to you at 120%, why can't they just go to the bank, borrow and pay 13% and then put in the rest? So the bottom line is that there's a catch, and that catch is that the one will end up losing. And because they're loosely controlled, you'll end up losing. So I tell people, please avoid those. Just go to the mainstream financial institutions where they're backing their riders. You get a mortgage. If you die, their riders, they can pay, mortgage off. You get loan to the bank. Their insurance you take that can take up. So my bottom line is to people, please avoid shortcuts. If you want to double your money, for example, if you use the time value of money, it takes about 3.7 years to double your money. Why could somebody tell you that by just praying 10 minutes is going to double your money? And you go into that. So sometimes these shortcuts are dangerous. I'll just tell people to avoid all those and then go to the mainstream. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Oh, interesting. It takes how many years, Prof? Again, to double your money?
3.7 years.
3.7 years.
3.7. Yes.
And
if
someone will do it on one hit, one cryptocurrency something.
Yeah, somebody will say, let's shut our eyes, pray for 10 minutes, the money will be doubled. I mean, people have been scorned. People have been conned. Even you've read in the papers, even very prominent people, some have even been ministers, So honestly, let's not just be greedy. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So, Daktari, I think Waweru, time is up now. Before we do our parting shots, I think maybe, Daktari, you can tie in betting, youth betting, and let's see how best we can help them out. I'm sure there are many parents right now who are in a tight place, asking how they can what they can do to help the children who have been caught up in gambling.
Yes, gambling addiction is on the rise, and it is, as people think, it's a quick way of getting money, but addiction, it's just a form of addiction, and they can get help. Parents and the ones who are affected can get help. There is a hotline for that. It's 1199. And you can find them on their website as well, www.responsiblegambling.or.ke. They can be connected to a gambling addiction therapist who will help them.
Thanks so much, Dr. See, that's something I don't think a lot of people knew.
Hotline 1199.
Or 1199. Okay, we'll change that and do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who didn't know that information. So as always, we're very grateful to our guests for giving us a lot of insights. We never seem to have enough time to talk about all the things we want to do, especially the aspects of side hustles and doing a Me Too kind of business. But I mean, unfortunately, that's the time we have. But we always threaten that we're going to have our guests back, and we will definitely have to have this conversation again. For the sake of just expounding more on what we've actually picked up today. So this was our 12th episode of Great Leadership Live, and as always, standard operating procedures. I didn't shrub this time. I didn't quite get my words out. We have our parting shots, and I would like to start with Daktari. Any parting shots? Anything you'd like to impart onto our viewers?
Great. If there's nothing you've gotten from what I said, one thing is that it is okay to not be okay, and that there's help. There is a solution to every problem. If you feel that you do have some symptoms of mental health issues, do reach out. My contact is down on the screen, bottom of the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daktari. Ken, and then Prof.
Thank you. I think I want to encourage those who might be going through a very difficult time right now, without a job, no income, or reduced income. There's a friend of mine, when I was going through a very difficult time, he told me troubles or problems are not permanent. So I want to encourage them and tell them that troubles are not permanent and problems are not permanent. This will pass. Hang in there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. Professor, take it home.
Yeah, one thing I would just say as a parting shot is that to remind again listeners that kindly seek financial expertise on that, on anything. I've seen people, because of COVID, we have a lot of people who've gotten retrenched, who've lost jobs, and then they're getting a package. Somebody was earning 10,000, 15,000 a month. All of a sudden, it's been given 200,000 or even $1 million, those who have gone for voluntary retirement. And then that's a lot of money to them, just simply because they've never handled that kind of money. Then they start getting into an expenditure that was beyond what they were doing for, not knowing that this money is not going to be there forever. So kindly seek financial expertise. That is what I just keep on letting the listeners, let them know that there are people who can help them. We even have institutions that help in debt. If you're having issues to do with debt management, debt scheduling, that can help you to get out of those kind of problems that you can. So that is what I'll tell them. That would be my parting shot.
Thank you so much, Professor. Mato, my parting shot is very kahe, but I suppose it lends itself to the aspect of not having a financial expert looking after you. And that parting shot is a fool and his money are soon parted.
Yes,
true. That reminds me also of the picture that we grew up seeing everywhere. I sold on credit and I sold on cash. Yeah, terms. You see that it's similar to Christ is the head, is the unseen guest at this table.
Yeah, Martin. Just one other thing.
Yes, sir.
That I just wanted to put on that is also affecting us, that we need to think about, probably talk about it next, is about saving for retirement. Studies have shown that 52% of Kenyans, as soon as they retire, they start depending on their dependents for support. That is putting so much pressure on those who are working to help, to save, because they basically have nothing now. They have to support their parents. So that is something that we need to start thinking about as we move on. Let's talk about saving for retirement and future, because inevitably we will go beyond 50 years, and then people now start dying and suffering. So something that we need to probably think about in the next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Interesting point. Sawa. So in conclusion, just summarizing what we've talked about today, very interesting actually. And I like the stats. And for those who are watching, you can memorize this, or at least take note of it. I think first of all, start teaching financial management at an early stage. It's very important. I've seen this, having grown up both here and in Europe. You see, children are taught to live within their means, especially when it comes to pocket money. So you'd find in the Kenyan context, a child will be given 100 or 200 bob a week, or 1,000, depending on, of course, on your financial background. And they are made to, that's the money they'll use when they go out on Sunday. That's the money they'll use to buy whatever they need, or save it to buy a doll, as opposed to this thing of mom, I need, dad, I need, mom, I need. And we keep on doing that. I want a PlayStation. I want this. I want that. There's no culture of saving or culture of budgeting within a certain amount. Prof talked about Maslow's law. Back to the basics for now. That's the way you can cope and try and get through this COVID manenos. Cut down on any unnecessary expenditure and just focus on the basics. What was shocking is 91% of residents in Nairobi are paying rent. Now that, I don't know what other stats you could give us of another city that maybe would give us an ideal situation, Prof. What would be an ideal statistic? But 91% of our city's population are paying rent. That is shocking.
Yes, I can tell you 91% of our population, that is World Bank report, 91% of Nairobi residents are paying rent. Second thing that you need to tell you is that rental, we have about 40% of Kenyans are spending their income on rent. 40% of the income is going to rent, as opposed to ideally it's supposed to be 30%.
Yes.
Third, 70%, that's last May's figure, 70% of Nairobians who pay rent were not able to pay rent on time. So you can see how big this problem is.
Not only is it high in terms of numbers, but you can't also pay it on time. Of course, definitely. One thing leads to another. You just reintroduced the 52% of Kenyans who retire start depending on their children. So saving is really important, thinking about your retirement. And I think we have to bring up a show that's specific on retirement, managing finances specific for retirement.
Okay.
Clearly, we've had middle class have a big problem in Kenya when it comes to finances, buying unnecessary stuff. I like the thing about living beyond our means when it comes to cars. Not only do you have one car, you have three, and maintenance is an issue. Is it for show? Does it serve its purpose? And so on and so forth. And also during this COVID period, many people could not even dispose of these vehicles at market rates because first of all, there's no one buying, and second, of course, it's not a quick thing you can dispose of to sort out other financial constraints here. So when it comes to business record keeping, maintaining proper books, it's really important. And maybe you can reach out to Prof and Ken, who can advise on how you can go about it. I'm sure there are some, I think what people are kind of scared of when it comes to seeking financial advice is how much will it cost me? How much will it cost me to come to Ken to get some financial advice? Am I going to pay 2 months worth of my salary for him just to tell me something that kind of I had my mom telling me or my grandma all my life on how to manage finances? Or what is it, Ken?
I'll approach that from my counseling background, because I do counseling, and normally it costs about 3,000 to 5,000 shillings when you sit down with somebody for, I don't know, 2 hours or so.
Wow.
It just depends on what they need to doing. So it's not a lot of money, but it depends on what are they looking to achieve. So we can come up with a plan. We can come up with a budget. We can look at their debt situation. How can they get out of debt? We can look at their current expenditure and whether they're living beyond their means, and that kind of thing. So it's not very expensive. It's actually quite manageable. But then again, if you're really hard up and everything, and you come and say, hey, you know what, I don't have that. Can you just help me? I think the key thing is just to look for people who can help you. even friends who you know are good at finances. They don't have to be accountants. Go and sit with them. They know how to manage money. So it doesn't have to be an accountant, really.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, one other thing, Martin.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a saying that if you think education is expensive, you try ignorance.
Correct.
Yeah, and also it costs money to get money.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Very true. Yeah, so we've just a few final points from today's discussions. Diversify your income. A salary alone is not enough. Spouses, pool resources, put together budget. And another thing that I found really important is if you have to do something outside of your usual paying job, if you're moonlighting or something, get something that's commensurate to your skills and qualifications. I liked that thing of don't start looking into chickens because Mr. Moguku became a billionaire, and that's a story that's been going around town. From chicken, he became a billionaire, but there's a lot of behind the scenes we are not told about. So I think ni hayo tu machache, Mwanaweru, na ours is to say thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been very interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Asante. Nice to see Prof after so many years.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have to do another show, part 2, and talk about retirement, especially. That was another shocking statistic. 52% end up going back to their children who are just beginning their own families and lives, and then you have to depend on them. It's really tough.
Yeah, and then Martin, one thing on that, why we need to bring this up,
yes,
is because 52%, like I said, you are supporting your parents, so they are okay. The unfortunate thing is that your children are not going to support you. Right now they have a totally different mindset, so that's why it's so critical that you should start saving now, so as to take care of yourself and your spouse, because your children are not going to support you. Look at their preferences now. You don't appear you're not anywhere in their radar. Thank you.
Prof, I'll just take one question from one of our viewers, Caroline Mugadi. I'll put it up here just very quickly if you can, because I think this is really important. You mentioned this is not the best time to invest, but market prices right now are down for stock and properties. How can one take advantage if they are liquid? Is it advised to invest or not?
No, I was talking about those who have already been laid off and they have no idea whether they're going to have an income. So for that, this would not be the best time. The best time now is to be on a survival mode. But those who have surplus, I'll tell you, this is a time to buy real estate. You've seen they're coming down. If you go to the banks, they've already repossessed vehicles. So those who have excess, this is the best time to buy even shares. But those who don't have jobs now, they cannot think about taking risk. Right now, they are on what you call survival mode. I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, Asante, I think you've answered Caroline Mugadi's question. And yeah, time flies when you're having fun, Waweru. We are 23 minutes overboard.
This has been the longest, then?
It was the longest, but I think very interesting.
Statistically, yes.
I don't think one can talk finances even in over 5 or 10 episodes. It's a really
definitely not.
So thank you very much. For those viewing or those who have missed the show, the link or want to repeat the show and sit down with your pen and paper and take note of statistics, the link will be up on our website and it stays there for time immemorial. As long as YouTube is up, we will be there. So thank you all, and see you next week. We have another interesting topic coming up. Well, all our topics are interesting. And
I'd like to hope so, yes.
Sawa sawa. Have a good one.
All right. Good night.
Keep safe, everyone. Yeah, pleasure being with you.
All right.
Yeah.